Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
I want to welcome everyone to the meeting tonight. And we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll ask the clerk to announce the meeting and call the roll.
A special session is being held on Thursday, October 26, 2017 at 5:00 p.m. in the 5th floor conference room for a presentation by the Wyandotte Economic Development Council, Workforce Development and Growth, and My WICO mobile app. Roll call. Markley. Here. Walters. Millbrook.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Mugia. Johnson.
Here.
Kane. Holland.
Here. All right, we're going to start off with Wyandotte.
Sir.
Mr. Bach, would you like to make any introduction?
I would. Thank you, Mayor. Excited to have the Wyandotte Economic Development Council staff over here this evening with Greg Kendall and his group that have come in to go through this. We asked them to come over, and they had asked to come over and really tell us about what they do as far as their operations. And I will say from our operations, from my office and the county administrator's office and economic development, they are very critical partners to us. They do a lot of heavy lifting on their end. When we come over here and we have projects that we're going through and we're working, it's because these folks have spent many hours and days going through and working on different people, different projects, so they can come as far as they are to get, so then we can start working through and putting into a development agreement phase. So very pleased to have them here tonight. And Greg, I'll turn it over to you and let you introduce your team and go through your presentation.
Thank you all. Number one, Mayor, Doug, Commissioners. I had to use Doug first off just to get my team to come up here. So this is how we tag team and collaborate. I have an idea, and then I have to get the team to do it. So immediately to my left is Carrie Lynn. She's our Executive Assistant as well as Investor Relations Coordinator. Marcia Harrington, who's our Business Retention Coordinator. And then Danica Rome, who's our Senior Director for Business Retention Expansion and the Workforce Solutions. And then we also employ Loretta Collenbell, who's a contractor for us on the business retention side as well. From title alone, you can tell that we spend probably more time on the business retention side than anywhere else. And then to my right is John Stevens. And while he doesn't work for us, without John and Doug and, of course, many other departments, we would never get done what we do here in the county as a tag team. So we appreciate the investment, the time. Commissioner McKiernan is on our board, as is Mayor Holland. Commissioner McKiernan in particular and Commissioner Philbrook participate very heavily on our Workforce Solutions Committee, as does Commissioner Johnson, the Workforce Partnership Board. So we interact with you all on a regular basis and feel fairly familiar with you all because we're in the trenches with you all on a daily basis. So I thought what I would do is kind of a quick presentation. I know there's some other folks that have presentation today as well. Ask questions if you have them, and we'll see if we can't work with this. First off, you know our mission is essentially to do whatever it takes to drive the economy in Wyandotte County through whatever partnerships, whatever programs, which you will see even through the presentation, the sort of the evolution of the Economic Development Council over the last 25 years. This is the sort of ending of our 25th anniversary. We have a 17-member board. You've got 2 members of the board here, and about 112 public and private investors, including you all. We are probably, in terms of revenue, you all make up about 1/3 of our revenue. per year through your contract. Partnerships and collaboration for all the things that we do. It all comes back to relationships and working with people and connecting folks back to either sites and buildings, figuring out whatever the problem may be. We play a lot of different roles, but it's always back to the relationship piece of it and making sure that we're doing the right thing here in the community. The 4 key areas, attraction, that tends to grab the most number of headlines. But as you know from the folks that we have just with here on our team, we spend more of our time on the retention and expansion side, keeping and growing what we have. About 3 years ago, we all collectively determined that we needed to do more to make sure we protect our base. There are a whole lot of folks looking to move our companies out of Wyandotte, and a fairly small team of us making sure that we keep them here. And so we have spent an inordinate amount of time and resources to try to ensure that we keep the companies that we have and grow them. So that's what our team does, by and large, is try to make sure we keep those folks. It isn't always successful, and frankly, not every company is perfect. Not everyone is paying great wages and is a great community advocate, but business retention is a big part of what we do. Marketing or promotion, we usually say that anybody will listen to us, we'll go talk to them. Regardless of size and scope, if they want to hear our story and the great things that we're doing here in Wyandotte, then we're happy to go talk to them about that. Yesterday I was down in Atlanta talking to some site consultants about Wyandotte County and the state of Kansas and why they ought to come up to this location. And then lastly is workforce solutions. So less than 2 years ago, the board agreed that what we were doing was not really focused on workforce developing. We weren't developing the workforce, but what we were doing is trying to figure out how to piece together solutions for our employers, for our citizens, and to try to connect those jobs that were being created with the companies and with our folks. So, and we'll talk a lot more about that. This is our board, everybody's mugshot, so you have a good feel for the cross-section of public and private investors that are on our board. Before we kind of get into the programmatic piece, I just want to give you kind of an overview of just some general information. So this kind of gives you an idea of where our leads come from. About half of them come directly to us. So folks who pick up the phone from the real estate brokerage development, from maybe banks, it may be site selectors from across the country will call us directly and inquire about whether we have sites, buildings, programs that might work for them. And then the next big chunk is really split between the unified government and investors. So there's been a little bit of a switch here for a little while. KCDC wasn't as big a piece of our lead generation. That has grown in recent months. The number of leads coming directly from our investors, which, as you might expect, are a lot of developers in the market in the region, have kind of come down just a little bit. But then you see how it kind of splits out between the UG as well as a big provider. I'm going back again to that collaboration where a project may start here, we may get involved to do some portion of it, or vice versa. And then leads by sector, I think right now is probably one of the more healthier mixes of leads that I've seen in a good while. We're seeing a good mix between the manufacturing as well as the retail service side of it. Now, if I had to split that service retail piece up, I would say it's more heavily laid out on the service side. And then you see office, which has creeped up quite a little bit in the last few months. And then retail, residential. Mostly on the residential side, I would tell you we're working with multifamily projects. The single family piece is a little bit different, but multifamily, we do get a little more engaged in that process. This is just for historical. Instead of just seeing the typical 5-year stretch, I kind of put this into a 10-year scope to give you a feel for where we are historically on capital investment. In years past, capital investment is important. Without capital investment, we're not going to continue to grow. But I would tell you that the board of the EDC has lessened its focus on just capital investment, because what we saw over the last 4 or 5 years is significant investment and significant wages, but we weren't seeing that connection to our citizens here in Wyandotte County. And so what we saw is this very large disconnect between all of this capital investment and our household income. And we're going to get much more into that piece of it because we're spending a lot of time on just that aspect of it. But I think it's important to at least look historically that those years in 2009 and 10, those were phenomenal years in all respects. But we've gotten pretty accustomed to some pretty strong years. In 2017, you see year to date, we've announced $220 million collectively. There's another $63 million in pending projects, and then the $160 is actually the American Royal, as you might expect. And so we've kind of broke those out to show you what that looks like. You've seen these next two slides. John had a presentation some months ago. I just kind of wanted to kind of pick up on this. I didn't want to go back through all of that, just to highlight where we are with investments. It's kind of tiny, kind of hard to read. But what you see is that we've had 34 investments already made this year. That's largely ahead of where we were this time last year. We anticipate another probably 5 to 10 investments announced. What the trend is telling us on this side is that the size of the projects are getting smaller in terms of the value of those investments, as well as the number of jobs, because the companies that are making the expansions are smaller. And that kind of goes back to the evolution of our business retention program. So the first year or two, we really spent our time working with the largest companies, our biggest employers, where we'd have the biggest impact, and that shows up in those investments. Now we're calling on smaller to mid-sized companies. We call a lot more of them. They take just about as much time, but that's equating into those $250,000 investments, $1 million investments. So we're maybe 3 years ago, we were looking at $3.5 million average investments. We're probably looking at closer to $2 to $1.5 million investments. It's not a bad thing. That's where the NRA program really comes into play, is helping those kinds of projects. But every one of those projects that comes through our office has to go through your all's offices as well, in terms of the UG planning and zoning and engineering and economic development. So again, a lot of effort goes into making sure these projects all come to fruition. And this is just between 2013 to 2017 collectively, 177 announced successes. It's a lot of projects when you think about it. It's a lot of buildings being filled. It's a lot of land being developed. More importantly, I think it's kind of interesting to see on the scattergram that the balance between the east side of the community versus the west side, north and south. I mean, you really can tell where the highways are, where the infrastructure is, where our parks are, where our retail developments are, because they all line up right along those areas. Now we start to look at how we respond to projects. So we use this map fairly frequently because we'll have a project like today who's looking for 20 acre sites, 200,000 square feet, a minimum of 75,000 square feet. So we will go to something like this. We have one for sites as well, but I mean for buildings, but this kind of shows you some of the large sites that are available today. And even among this group, there are varying stages of ready for development. But we utilize this and working with the UG team to determine really what sites should we pitch for which projects. So if you remember, 3.5 years ago, Doug, we pitched a site, which now is Amazon, for Project Socrates. It was a bit of at the time, a bit of a Hail Mary because it was zoned retail, or zoned residential, and it was topographically a challenging site, but within that period of time, we collected a lot of information. We kept pushing forward. We came in second on that project, which was fortuitous, because now we have a much better project in its place. And usually what happens, once a site gets kind of on this list, particularly these larger sites, this then becomes the sites that you see move over the next, say, 24 to 36 months, because they become, the easier sites will move down the list. So site number 2, for instance, is in Commissioner Murguia's district. We've been working on this site now for eons. That site is largely now going to be under contract. We hope that it will close by the end of the year. But that then requires a lot more investment as well to move that project forward, hopefully use Merriam Lane in a better way. The same is true with, say, Site 11. That's another site that we've talked about for a long time between Bonner Springs and Edwardsville. A lot of infrastructure was required, a lot of conversation between the UG, Edwardsville, Bonner Springs to make that all work. And now we see that site developing under Lane 4. So when we talk to clients coming in, folks who don't really know us, we tend to start with things like a map like that before, and we'll say, why Wyandotte? Why even select us? And we often talk about our diversity of employment, diversity of citizenry, what kind of industries we have. There's some of them lined up there. The available workforce piece of it, which is what we also use then for Amazon, which we're using now for some of the other companies. How much investment that we have going on in the community, that kind of shows some trends to a site consultant. And then we talk a lot about policies. In this case, I highlighted some of the state policies. It gives you a feel for how we begin to introduce the community to an outside party. Location and connectivity. This is a key piece. It's always been about Kansas City Metro being in the center of the country, being easy to get in and out, the logistics of it. For us, it tends to hammer home on a regular basis that you have available land and available workforce in the central part of the Kansas City metro with highways, rail, airport. The connectivity that we have in Wyandotte County is unsurpassed, which is why we win a lot of projects. The county itself physically can sell a lot of projects just because of where we are. When we put everything else together with transit and all the other pieces and parts, that story becomes pretty easy to tell. We usually have 4 or 5 slides tied to capacity. And sometimes I have capacity and passion, I have capacity and speed of market. It depends on how I'm feeling maybe that day. But what we tend to try to show, whether it's the Amazon project or the Speedway project or the Cerner project or Sporting or any number of these projects, is the capacity of this community to put big projects together. In this case, a big project. We relay that even to a smaller project to say, look, we can do on any size project any number of things very quickly. We talk about the speed to market and how quickly our planning and zoning can move projects through, how quickly you all move through the process, what it takes to get a project done, and the proximity of the team. When we walk in with Doug or John and the rest of the team, it's a small team, frankly, but it also cuts through a lot of what I call the red tape or the perceived amount of time it takes to get a project done. And these kind of projects, when you line them up, 3 or 4 of them in a slide to a potential client, it does hammer home the fact that this community has done a lot of big projects very recently. Almost every year, there's something big going on in this community. And it resonates well with folks. Now, generally speaking, on a presentation, I would go into specific, a local presentation. The state would do their piece of the presentation around incentives, but at least wanted to put a slide up here to say, here are generally the incentives that we utilize. I used to come in and give you the alphabet soup of incentives. It's still an alphabet soup, but some of that alphabet has actually dropped off. So we don't use TDD very often, right? It used to be transportation development districts. Now there are several other tools, usually a CID that we use. And this just kind of lays it out, but I also wanted to highlight the other piece of it. So, new market tax credits. As we move to the east side of 635 in particular for redevelopment, we're starting to talk a lot more about new market tax credits. Even the north side of the Turner Diagonal is in a unique location in that we could use new market tax credits, where normally, if we're talking about an industrial project or major redevelopment, they aren't always in a low to moderate income census tract. And so we're looking very closely at that because it ties in with not only new markets, but also LISC's Catalytic Urban Pre-Development Fund, which we had not frankly been great at pulling together until a recent meeting here at the UG where they wanted to have another conversation. And it was reintroduced to us in a different way, a way that sounded much more flexible than we had originally interpreted the program. And now we have several projects that we're working on collectively to move that money into the community. And then the small business grant projects that you all have, depending on what project we're working with, all of those things come into play. When we look at the business retention data, we're just looking at this year only, year to date. We've done about 123 surveys. Last year, I think we did 126, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we're on par to meet or exceed what we did last year in terms of retention surveys. And we've largely boiled it down into 3 sort of big buckets of companies based in part on what they're paying, what kind of investment they're making into R&D, what they're doing for their employees. I mean, it isn't necessarily rocket science, but when you really start to look at now over 300 unique company surveys that we've done using a very specific tool that we utilize, you can really begin to see dynamics pop up from these companies that tell us, within just a few questions, is this company one that is going to be investing in themselves? Are they going to be investing in their employees? Are they going to help us with transit? Are they going to help us with barriers to employment? Are they going to be happily working with us to find resolution to if they got a pothole out front? How they introduce that to us can often kind of fall back into what kind of company are they? And then when we look at the top positions on field, this has remained largely unchanged for the last couple of years, where industrial maintenance is of high need, machinists, folks who have skills, warehouse workers, sales, which is more of an office-oriented. The diesel side of it, whether that's diesel mechanic or just CDL driving, that industry is huge. It's changing. It's still not considered what I would call a sexy industry, but it's a changing industry for sure into much more of a daytime kind of job and not over-the-road kind of stuff. Or we equate a lot of times in the diesel mechanic Just like when you go to the doctor, you don't do anything until you're hooked up to a machine first. So they don't want you to put a wrench on that truck until you've actually hooked it up to a computer, which means that when we're talking to school district, everything is about STEM right now. It doesn't matter what industry, whether it's manufacturing, retail, you name it, you've got to have the ability to run a computer and understand STEM through all of these industries. And then the top traits, this again is not going to be surprising to you that they're not hard skills. It's about soft skills, the reliability of showing up, the work ethic, and then skill shows up. What I think is interesting is that we used to find that property taxes were one of the top issues that came up in our Bureau calls. It is now consistently workforce. Property taxes show up usually around third, give or take. Depends on who you're talking to. So as we start to transition into this workforce discussion, and this is a slide that we use with most of the clients that we come into contact with, we know that workforce is probably the number one discussion. If we have a site or a building, it gets us a ticket into the meeting. They know they're going to get probably a certain number of incentives from the state and local. They have already probably figured some amount or some idea of what that looks like. What they're looking from us is to show them without a shadow of a doubt that we can answer the question about workforce. Right now, it's all about the workforce. Recently, Project Stamp, a large project, was more about workforce than it was anything else. We introduced them to a developer. They said, great, we kind of like the developer, we kind of like the location. What are you going to do about the workforce? It was all about touring them through the tech center, meeting with those folks and trying to understand how we could fit it in. But it is a national issue. And the question is, which communities across the country are going to find ways to address the workforce issue to resolve the business need? So kind of leading off with that, here's our labor force. This is what it looks like in the metro. This is what our piece of it is. We're about 7.3% of the labor force. Our unemployment rate right now is the lowest it has been historically. We're still the highest in the metro. We're in still the bottom quartile of unemployment rates across the state. We have counties across western Kansas that are less than 2%. I mean, we would normally say that anything less than about 4.5% is considered full employment. The federal government equates 5.2% or less to be full employment. This is an indicator, because we have this discussion at Workforce Solutions all the time. It is one indicator. We know that in many parts of our urban areas, that is probably double that. Even so, if you look at it as a trend, that number is coming down. But we can do a lot better, and we'll talk some more. But
Greg, do you have the national unemployment rate, the average national unemployment rate?
It is, oh God, I didn't put it on there. It is.
Do you know what it is, just roughly?
We are 0.7%, so they're 4.1% nationally. I was looking. The reason I know that is because I was trying to figure out if this was the closest we had been to the U.S. average, in a certain number of years. And we've had a couple other times where we were 0.5% from the national average. My goal is, of course, to get us to the national average, but I don't control that as well as I'd like.
And do you know the difference between the unemployment rate west of 635 versus east of 635 in Wyandotte County?
We can get down there. It's a lagging indicator, so this is another big discussion topic we have. When the American Community Survey information comes out, it's lagging, so you can get it into census tracts, but it's at least a full year, if not 2 years of lagging. You'll see the same trend, but as you go into our lowest household income census tracts, you will also see a corresponding higher unemployment rate.
I guess, what is as high as you've seen east of 635?
I've seen some census tracts more recently, and I didn't look at it today, I should have, as high as 13, 14% still. And so, but I'm looking for that outlier. I'm trying to figure out where is the highest unemployment. We had identified those when the Amazon project came in, so that when we went out to promote the Amazon job fairs, we communicated into those churches and into those social service agencies so that we would hopefully get a larger percentage of folks from those zip codes. Now, in that case, we got a zip code. We did not get stuff back from a specific census tract back from Amazon, but we do know that the folks they ended up hiring, what zip codes they came from. Because that was the idea. Let's make sure that we're making a truly bigger impact. Those census tracts that have the highest unemployment also have the lowest median household income. Now, like in your district, you won't see unemployment rates like that. You'll see unemployment rate because your lowest household income, I did look at this today. I didn't look at every single census tract, but among them, your lowest one might be 27,000 in one census tract. But then it'll go, 37 to 45 pretty quickly.
Right, because the average is 37.
That's right. In your district?
My
I don't know
district.
what your district.
Yep.
The county, it's a little higher than that, but yes, that would make sense.
Yep.
So we are, I guess to some of that degree, we're trying to become much more sophisticated with our data sets and the information so that we can answer that question as well. It's always a question of when did the data come out? Did it come out this year? Did it come out a year ago? What data are we looking at? And that's a challenge that we have. We want data today, but it doesn't always correspond to when we want it.
Do you know what the participation percentage is in USD 500 in the SB 155 program that's training people to fill those positions you were just talking about?
I don't know the answer to that one. Not off the top of my head anyway.
Just curious.
Yeah.
It's a great program, it's free for 11th and 12th graders, and they can graduate. It's the whole Diploma Plus program that they're doing. I just wondered how much success they'd had.
Well, this year is the first year that the freshman class is enrolled in the college and career academies. So we're kind of looking at this year being maybe perhaps more of a baseline than even last year. It's a fairly new program, but I tell you what, 80% of the jobs being created do not require a four-year degree. I mean, this is right up your alley, right?
Right.
And so we've got to move that pendulum back to say you got to train kids for the jobs that we're creating, not the Metro and Wyandotte, wherever. But to suggest that all of these kids need a four-year degree is just not plausible. And you can get a certificate and associate's degree at the school district's cost before you ever graduate.
Right. And go right into a job.
Go right into a job. Now, ideally, and we're getting way into the presentation, but ideally, if we could really get sophisticated enough, those kids would have some sort of experience in their sophomore, junior, senior year to the point that those companies that they're having an experience with would say, look, why don't you either become an intern with us, why don't we go ahead and bring you on as a part-time. If you need a four-year degree, let's go ahead and give you a scholarship and help you, but you got to come back and work for us. Or in many cases, hey, when you graduate, why don't you just go ahead and come to work for us? And we get that sophisticated that we don't lag with folks not having a good paying job. And the only other thing I would note on this participation rate, at one time there was some conversation about, well, gosh, this anecdotally, Wyandotte Countyans just lazy. Are we just not in the workforce? And what the data suggests is no, that isn't the case at all. Our folks are working. We just have a lot of working poor that no matter how many jobs they have are going to stay in poverty. And so that's part of this whole discussion about how do we do a better job of connecting folks to these jobs.
We have some data, if it's helpful at all, at the regent level that will attest to that the biggest stumbling block is affordability and accessibility. So if that helps your case.
It would help our case.
Decline in Wyandotte Countyans attending four-year institutions, but that's why I'm curious about the data. If they're taking advantage of SB 155, that's actually a good thing because that puts them in immediate job placement.
I know that everybody is hugely supportive of it. I have not seen the data on last year's class, but I know this year is that first year of that College and Career Academy piece of it with the business advisory councils around each one of the career academies rolling out. We're getting there. I don't think we're fully there. On the workforce piece of it, education, this goes again back to this whole discussion that we have almost 53% of our population have a high school diploma or less. And I'm not so concerned about just having a high school graduation diploma, but we are knocking it out of the park for not having high school diploma, and that's not where we want to be number one. If we can decrease that number, we will change the household income in the community as a whole. I'm not going to tell you that the EDC alone is going to solve for that, but around the table that we have Workforce Solutions Committee, we have about 25 to 30 folks showing up every month to talk about these issues, and these are the topics that we're now focusing very heavily on. The language piece of it, diversity is fantastic. We market that to the hilt, but not speaking English very well is a hindrance to employment, no matter where you are, Wyandotte County being no different. We need to work harder on making sure that folks have at least some cursory knowledge of English. In terms of our local solutions piece of it, we've really tagged it to two pieces. The future talent pipeline, which is this college and career academies, and then the existing unemployed, immigrant unemployed, that working poor segment. When we look at the household income, and this again goes back to why we've really taken a much heavier focus on this workforce piece, we have the third highest wages paid in the state, but our household income is in the bottom quartile. We're not at the bottom, as some might suggest, but we are in that bottom quartile. However, our rate of increase is outpacing everyone else in the metro and in the region. So this year, we're now at 43,129. That's a 3% increase over last year, a little over 3%, which is twice that of the metro and twice that of the state, which is good. Last year, we had a 14% increase. So those on the board know that I was hoping for a double-digit increase, and we didn't get two in a row. But this is actually only the first time in 20 years that we have seen 2 years consecutive of increase in household income. Not just us, but also the state and the region. We need, in order to catch up to the state, so one of the metrics that we have at the EDC now is that we will take on the idea that we want our household income in Wyandotte County to match that of the state. And in order to do that, at this present rate, we would need about a 5 to 5.5% increase in our household income annually, and the state would have to remain at about 1.5%. So we would have to continue to highly outperform the state. I think we can do that. Amazon and some of the other things we've been doing the last couple of years haven't even begun to catch up yet. So the hope is that we're priming the pump for great things to come, but this is the number that we're going to start, that we're tracking and pegging. All right, I don't have too many more slides here. Much around this whole idea of collaboration and partnership is the idea that it takes an awful lot of folks to move this discussion forward. This is just a smattering. The Employment Consortium, a whole bunch of social service agencies. There are some other union folks that are involved with this initiative, but these are folks who have either put a lot of time, some money into this, are participating in core meetings, and I just want to make sure everybody understood that this was not just the EDC, this is a big collaborative effort. The UG is a big part of that. On the workforce training side, so Danica in particular is coordinating a number of very specialized pieces of this so we can affect certain industry sets, particularly around preventative maintenance technicians. We're talking about college and career academies, taking a lot of time with that. This next piece is going to be run the food manufacturers. We have about 36 food manufacturers, and they're all primed to grow. Amazon case study, you all know a lot about this, but I can't help but make sure that we keep hitting on the fact that this was really one of the things that we said, look, if they come into the community, this is something we're going to do. We want to push hard that Wyandotte Countyans get a good shot at these jobs. Ultimately, 25,000 people applied for 3,000 jobs, which means that at least 25,000 people thought that a $13 an hour job plus benefits was worth inquiring about. 3,000 folks got those. 1,000 of them were Wyandotte Countyans. Now the challenge for us is, how do we grow that 1,000? How do we make sure those 1,000 stay in those jobs? And if they begin to transition out of Amazon, how do we make sure they don't fall back through the cracks? That means we have to have a very tight relationship with that HR team at Amazon. That is still an ongoing iterative discussion as they build their team as well. But what I will say is that the partnerships that came together to help make that happen isn't like anything else we've ever done in the community, from the job fairs that we did in each of your all's districts, and we appreciate your all's role in that, because this was our first foray into see if we could even do it. Can you do job fairs? Can we get people engaged? Would people even participate? And what we found is that they will. The last couple of slides are really about next steps around workforce. So when you all did the community health assessment, I participated in that. I'll be the first to say that I thought I was largely there as a placeholder for the business community, just to make sure we were trying to engage, the business community. What were their thoughts? How would they be touched? And when the survey came back and said that the number one thing that would affect their health was jobs and education, I think I was as stunned as anyone when they said, "So what are you all going to do?" And we all kind of went, I don't know exactly, because we've never been in this position before, where we help the UG and the county health department. We've never really worked with the county health department before, and suddenly we have this whole new set of relationships developing with another part of the organization to ultimately help grow the economy. And they have been phenomenal to work with. But of these four, jobs and education was number one. We're now looking at a process to develop a 5-year plan around jobs and education. This is an iterative process. It is evolving on a regular basis. Right now, what we're trying to do is develop a plan that is actionable, that is focused, so it won't solve for everything, but it'll solve for a certain amount of the issues around jobs and education, keeping in mind that we have this lens of economic development. Danica is very much a part of helping kind of craft this. So I'm the spokesperson today, but she's doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. But these are some of the areas that we really want to focus on, is that reducing those barriers to employment. And then you see childcare is number one. Criminal history, we just had this conversation, this language piece of it, and then transportation. Transit is a constant discussion among companies as well. How do we get those employees? On workforce solutions, a lot of times it's just a matter of saying, look, don't wait for the bus. If the bus is showing up late to the stop and your folks are getting dinged for being late to the shift, then take a van of your own and go to the main transit center and pick them up there. And that way they get to your place on time. It isn't rocket science necessarily, but it's just reminding folks that bus can't be at the same place, at the same stop, and for the same shift for every company at the same time. And we can't assume that the UG is going to solve for all transit issues by just putting more and more money into buses. There have to be public-private partnerships. And then on this increasing educational and training alignment with these demand occupations, this is a lot about early childhood education. This ties also back to childcare and making sure that we have programs in place for all age groups, that they're given a good head start on where we are. And then this post-secondary education piece of it, trying to identify where do they need to go? Do they need to go to the community college? Do they need a 4-year degree? Trying to anticipate what they need. And then access to those companies and making sure we have reduced that barrier into entry to begin with. And I think that's it. Oh, there's this. I'm kind of running out of time. And so these are the areas that we'll focus on from a traditional economic development perspective, but I did not want this workforce piece to get lost, because we are spending an awful lot of time on that with your all's guidance and help. But there's an awful lot of this discussion around global trade. That's one of Marcia's area. We think our companies have a much better chance of succeeding long term if they will take the leap to participate in the global trade. Most of them are not. The Northeast planning process is hugely important to us. As you know, we're an advocate for having a serious conversation about the land use and that whole part to drive retail, residential development long term. Product development is a constant area of challenge, making sure that we overcome the infrastructure challenges but utilize the assets that we have. We're fortunate to have great highways and a lot of infrastructure in the ground. And then really talking about the business retention is going to focus increasingly on that small to mid-sized companies, which may mean you won't see huge investment dollars, but you may see a lot of smaller companies. Now I think I'm done.
All right, any questions or comments? Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation, Mr. Kendall. Going back to the slide that you talked about next to last, the current barriers we're working to fix right there, and the criminal history. Could you just, for the sake of people listening who may be in need of a job with a criminal history, or a relative or anyone out there listening, talk about what the current time frames are? There may be somebody out there who is hesitant to call, and the time restrictions we talked about today, they needn't worry about that. So can you talk about that, and who,
To answer that question,
should anybody in that position call on your staff? Thank you.
As far as criminal history is concerned, it does vary by company to company and based on their company policies. What we tend to hear is we make decisions based on a case-by-case basis, and I believe that's what their legal department has told them to say. And that typically is the overarching barrier that we have to get past is to say, okay, what is really the answer here, and when do you make that decision? And when you say case by case, what will completely throw someone out? And when we go overall, and I hate to say what every company is doing in Wyandotte County, but what we tend to hear is that there's a 7 to 10 year criminal history felony in the past 7 to 10 years. So if it's beyond that, they are more likely to have the option to be hired. Now, most of the companies, and what we try to do is just re-educate them, get them in front of people who are specialized in the reentry program itself. And that's where we go to Wyandotte County Corrections has an excellent program, and they have excellent reentry specialists, as well as the state of Kansas. So I don't want to just say there's an overall number itself, but we try to continue to encourage our employers to look at a case-by-case basis and to be as open as possible.
Okay, thank you. Are you
Can I follow up on that, Commissioner?
Oh.
Because is there a way that we could connect proactively our community corrections folks who are working on reentry with some of our businesses, and maybe you're already doing that, to do some education ahead of time, particularly these groups that have so many openings, to say, look, we know for a fact a lot of people have felony convictions. Now, some of them have done felony activity that need to be held accountable for. We also know there's a huge disparity socioeconomically, that people whose daddy can't afford an attorney end up with more felony convictions than people who can. And so we've created a whole underclass in our society of people who have these felony convictions. And then they can never get a job, and then we're surprised when there's recidivism. So is there a plan to connect proactively?
Can I address that one?
Sure.
So the answer is not only yes, but hell yes. There is, and we're right in the middle of working on programs throughout the whole region about helping deal with that. So we have a lot of different players at the table right now. Kansas City, Missouri, us, Johnson County. A lot of us are working through Workforce Partnership in Kansas and other community groups in Missouri about putting together a way to address this issue.
That's great.
In an organized manner, believe it or not, where we come together, ask the same questions, can go down through and help someone so they're getting the same information across the board. So yeah, that's in play, but anything you can do to encourage people to work with us, I appreciate it.
I'd be glad to. Commissioner Townsend, continue. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Philbrook and Mayor. Two last questions. Well, Ms. Rome, just identify yourself and a phone number for people out there who are hearing this and might want to follow up. And a few minutes ago, you talked about getting someone, and I'm not sure if you meant the companies that you're working with or individuals who are seeking employment that were going somewhere. That's what I want to clarify.
Okay, so my name is Danica Rome, and my phone number is 816-885-9688. And my email is also another great way to connect with me, which is drome@wyedc.org. One of the things that I've kind of taken on as my own personal mission as well is to follow in what Commissioner Philbrook said, is that this needs to be an organized, unified message that the employers are hearing. And the best way to do that is as a community. And all too often we have, I'm going to get on my my post here, but all too often we have many different social service agencies that are working separately, very, very hard, but they're working just with their caseload. And so what we're trying to do is to spread that out to everyone so that we are having a unified message. And to do that, we have to have everyone at the table. We work together as a team to build a network of community partners, and that is everything from local churches to social service agencies, to employment agencies, to the guy down the street who has a mission. And we have an updated contact list, And what we will use this list, and we used it for Amazon, but it's to connect in a grassroots effort with the local community and get this information out. So if there is someone that you know or anyone else knows that's looking for a job, it makes sense to utilize that and get the word out. It's basically, it's a networking system. As we all know, how do you get a job? It's who you know.
Okay. Well, I do know someone, so I will be having them call you.
Okay.
But thank you very much, everyone on the staff, Mr. Kendall and Mr. Stevens for this. Thank you.
You have time for a couple more questions. Commissioner Johnson?
I don't have as much of a question. I do want to give kudos to you and your team, Greg, for the work that you did at Amazon. And I expressed this to Doug. It was a very deliberate endeavor to try to get Wyandotte Countyans jobs. And you and I have worked on some other projects, and I found the experience to be quite sobering in terms of you just can't lead the horse to the water. You can't make them drink. So I want to take time to say kudos to you for that. I think about of those 1,000 persons that were hired from Wyandotte County, I think about 40% of those came from 66102 and 66101, which speaks to the fact that you did a lot of effort in terms of reaching out to all parts of the community. I know that you all are working on endeavors to try to figure out how we can improve those processes. I think what we've established in this model is something that can be used in the future, but certainly we do have challenges as are outlined here. I don't know if you found out any more about some of the things that were there. There were challenges in terms of getting our folks jobs. 36% is great. I think if we can get more, that's even better. But when I look at issues like child care and transportation, did those things come up through our dialogue also with Amazon? I'm just curious as to reasons why some of our folks were not able to get even more jobs.
Absolutely, and one of the things that we tried to do was we knew that this was a barrier going into it, so we made sure that there were agencies available. For instance, Transportation Justice Welker, thank you, from Transit, was at or someone from his team was at every single event, and not only just being available to talk, but with maps and times and schedules so that anyone who walked in there could come and get the information. And as far as high school diploma, that was another thing because that was a requirement by Amazon. So we said, well, if anyone walks in here without a high school diploma, we want to give them an opportunity. So the next time the next Amazon comes, they will have that high school diploma or GED equivalent, and they'll be able to actually apply for the position.
Well, and Commissioner Johnson, I want to commend this commission for your commitment to not only to Wyandotte economic development and the continued funding, but also to the transportation, because this commission authorized additional bus routes to serve it. We did not want any of our residents not to have access to these jobs because of the bus routes. We expanded it, and Mr. Bach's office just on Tuesday expanded to a larger bus because of the utilization with Amazon. So kudos to the commission as well. We saw an opportunity and we jumped at it. So thank you all for your commitment to the transportation. Commissioner Philbrook.
I really do appreciate the hard work that this whole group has done. It's just amazing, and it's been very exciting for me to be part of it on the edges most of the time, hopefully, to encourage this. But what I do want to say is also involving workforce partnership, our federal state folks locally that really jumped in there and were of a lot of help, but they are also staying very, very engaged and are doing some restructuring to help even more the youth that are aging out of foster home into the streets or no job or whatever, and we're working on that also. And so that is a big thing, and we have people at the table working together. So the other thing is, I should have mentioned that first, and that is that, sorry, is that people that came in through this grouping, through our eight meetings and the last two, all of them were put into workforce at the state level, which means that even if they didn't get a job with Amazon, they're in that system and we can continue to help them. So that's a big thing.
Mr. Bynum, did you have something?
I just have a brief question. And Mr. Stevens, you might be chiming in on this. The upcoming Lewis and Clark Viaduct construction, combined with the potential bridge replacement on the Missouri side, I cannot stop thinking about the transportation issues in the Fairfax district that those construction projects are going to cause. And I just wondered, is that something that Wyandotte or our own economic development department is going to find yourself more deeply engaged in terms of talking with those businesses in Fairfax?
I think that
working with them on whatever the workaround is going to be for getting trucks in and out of that area. I can't stop thinking about that.
the trucks will figure it out pretty quickly. They will take alternative routes. That part is probably the easier parts. What I haven't thought about doing, however, until you mentioned that, is checking with KCATA and Justice to see what routes those buses are going to take coming back over and what effect that might have on those bus stops and whether that will delay or change, because we could see a rash of retention calls that say, hey, our folks are missing their shifts because the bus is late. Now, at least we've had enough calls at this point that I think most of our companies would reach out to us and say, is there something up? Because they're all showing up consistently late. But we may want to work with the Fairfax Industrial Association and some of the others to do some messaging around, hey, have a little patience with your employees as we sort of renegotiate this whole transit system here for a couple of years.
Right, good point.
That's great. Well, I want to thank Wyandotte. I want to thank the whole team for your work all the time for our community. There are not many economic development organizations who are as focused on the people in the community as they are on the businesses in the community. And you're focused on both. And that's remarkable. Mr. Kendall, you and I talk about this all the time. You never envisioned you'd be worrying about workforce and education, early childhood education. That's not been your area of expertise. But as you've drilled into what are the needs in Wyandotte County to grow our economy, we've got to grow businesses. That means we have to grow people, and we have to grow the workforce, and they should be mutually supportive. And so your all's focus and really cutting edge work at working with the people in Wyandotte County to connect the people with those jobs is terrific, and it's working, and we appreciate it. So thank you very much. We keep up the good work, and we look forward to another $1 billion in economic investment in 2018. All right. Thank you all very much. We do have another presentation. We'll switch out. We're going to go to 311. If you're watching at home, get out your smartphone and get ready.
I just installed it just now.
I installed it this morning. Yeah. Get out your smartphone. The new Unified Government app is ready for download.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor. As the next team makes their way up here, I'll go ahead and give a brief introduction to it. This is really another direction of the commission to find ourselves ways to be more customer friendly, how we can do that, how we can increase our efficiency in our operations, and bring it all together. And that brings us to our new mobile app that the team has been working on for some time. The project they are presenting tonight is not a finished one, and as people have mentioned, they're downloading. There's still some testing going on to it, so our official launch is still to come to get it out there to say we've got everything worked out, but we have it available to start working through. And there are additional pieces that'll be added to it as we go along that Mr. House will get into. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to our Knowledge Director, Alan House, and let him introduce his team and go through the presentation. Alan?
Thank you, Mr. Bach. Evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Here tonight to talk about the My Wyco mobile app that was rolled out on Tuesday of this week, so this is really fresh. But we wanted to come and present to you what it is that the app can do, as well as how this fits into our broader customer service and 311 approach for expanding and increasing our customer service. I'll start here to my right. I've got Mike Plunkett, the CFO and co-founder of Payit. And John, we're starting on the other one. Who is our vendor for this project. To my right, Brett Deichler, our director of 311. To my left, Debbie Pack, who is our treasurer. And I'll just say a brief note. She probably won't want me to say it, but Debbie is leaving to be the CFO of Salina. Tomorrow's her last day, so she's spending her last evening with the UG with the commission. So.
Congratulations.
So we're delighted to have her, and she's been a great partner. So as mentioned, this is a beta version of the My Wyco app. It is available on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. We'll hear tonight that it is iterative. As Mr. Bach said, we're looking for feedback. We're collecting feedback from employees, from initial users, and we see this as the start of a journey and not as the end. Sorry, on the presentation. There we go. All right. So, as Mr. Bach mentioned, hand me that clicker. What we're doing here is in support of the commission goals. So we've really three of the goals that are particularly affected here: improving customer service, the reduction of blight, the increase of safety, and the perception of safety. And it ties in, I think, with one of the mayor's priorities around innovation. So we're sort of pulling this together here in new ways to provide service. The other point I really want to emphasize here is that this is a collaborative effort. It has involved multiple departments from across the unified government here. And we're really pleased and proud of the teamwork that has gone into solving the technical challenges as well as the business side challenges. What are the processes? What are the things that departments want and that our citizens are requesting? There are a number of folks here in the audience, and maybe they could just raise their hand, who have been involved in the project. And again, both from across departments, from our vendor partners, we've had a good team, and we're getting stuff done. Should say too that if this was easy, it would have already been done. There have been a lot of technical sort of challenges as we've gone into it, but we have made a lot of headway. All right. So just to sort of set the stage in terms of the mobile app, 311 and the customer service goals, really, service, engagement, communication with residents, being a one-stop shop, providing self-service options. So we have 311 online now. That has actually been replaced as of Tuesday with the new Payit online as well. So we have a mobile experience and a web experience that match each other, and really meeting residents where they are. So if you look at the data nationally, and this is from 2017 data, 75% of all Americans own smartphones. It's ubiquitous in the 30 and below category, but the biggest growth has been in 65 and older. So 42% of Americans 65 and older have a smartphone, are using that, and 64% of households below 30,000 in annual income have a smartphone, and that's also up significantly. So again, looking at how do we reach people where they are and give them expanded customer service options, not just 8 to 5 when 311 is open, but really 24/7. So again, just sort of context, as of October 19th, the 311 call volumes, 92,000 calls or contacts as calls and emails to 311 this year. Municipal court continues to be the lead at about 36%. And you can just get a feel for the types and variety of calls that are coming in here. And this varies depending on sometimes seasonality and some of the other issues. So again, part of what we're doing from an overall perspective is seeing 311 and the CRM system that it has as the hub, the customer service hub that connects to multiple different departments. It is the point of first contact, and it connects and we are in the process of connecting it to the systems of other departments. The ones in green there are the ones that we are literally, on the verge of connecting electronically, automatically, so that in the case of Public Works, we are in final testing now where something that comes into 311 gets logged into the CRM system will automatically show up if it's a Public Works related issue in the Public Works Lucity system.
Mr. McKiernan, Commissioner McKiernan, do you want to jump in?
Could you go back one slide, please? 90, that's 1 year's worth of calls?
This is as of October 19th.
Oh, that's not even one full year's worth of calls.
Correct.
I think we need to really get sobered by the fact that there are 92,000 unique phone calls there. Just did the math, assuming 365, that's 252 calls a day. So I think we really need to appreciate the enormous amount of calls and data that's coming into this division, this department, and all of these people who are fielding those calls. And that is an amazing number of calls. So
10 an hour? More than 10 an hour?
Think about it in terms of our population. At this rate, by the end of the year, it would basically be as though every resident called once.
Right.
Yes. That's how many calls are going to have gone through.
Yep.
So, good job taking all those calls.
Brett and his team field all variety and at a high volume as well. Yep, it is. And I'll show you in a minute how we're putting that data to use. So making these connections from CRM to these different systems, we're looking at NRC. We're going to be connecting up there for code enforcement information. We're in discussions with Waste Management to, when something gets submitted as a trash complaint, it automatically shows up for quicker action. Same thing, we can take streetlight requests and we can transmit that as well to BPU. So there's a lot of opportunities to use the CRM system as the hub for customer service inquiries. And the other thing it does, you mentioned the call volume, is the more we can free up 311 call takers to have to answer questions, to spend a little more time with people and help them resolve it on the front end, that's a better customer service experience as well. The other part, and I know this has been a great interest to the Commission, is how do we close the loop? How does a resident get notified that something action has been taken? So again, 311 is the locus for whether it's phone, website, mobile app requests. It comes in there. If they're using the Pay It app, they will get an email notification that they in fact did submit their request, and it'll say what that was. We are also implementing that for the CRM system. So even if you call and we have your email, you'll also be able to get a notification confirmation of receipt. Those get transmitted to departments for action. The departments do take actions, obviously, as they're in their day-to-day business to close those. Where in the gray areas on the left that there's significant work still to be done is then closing that loop, getting that information back from departments to the 311 CRM system, and then notifying the residents. But those pieces are in motion to make that happen. So online 311 submissions, just to give a baseline of where we are today, you can see kind of putters along there, and then June, July, and August, a significant spike, and that was directly related to two things. One was the storms that we had, and two was the publicity that was put out in response to those storms saying use the mobile app or use the website to submit those requests. So there's a direct correlation there. So how do we use that data? And apologies if you've seen this before, but Commissioner McKiernan, to your point, we can use all of those data points about storm debris removal to identify where are those hotspots in the community. And then Public Works took this information and was able to use that in the dispatching of their crews. And in fact, if you looked at this and overlaid it with a National Weather Service map, you'd see that, in fact, this is exactly the storm tracks that they took through the community. So it lines up pretty well. And it gives us, again, additional data for the operational side of the organization. Likewise, on trash service, so we can map all of the trash service calls that we get and use that to work with and hold to account our vendor on waste and trash. So we're actively collecting this data now and transmitting it on a daily basis to Waste Management for action. And that's another way that we are using 311 and using the data that we get from it. Going forward, this is not set up yet, but it will be. We have our open data site. We're going to be putting that 311 data out there as part of the open data site. There is a national 311 open data standard, and we'll be working to meet that standard with our 311 data. That information is also being used for SOAR, and we want to make that information available to neighborhood groups. So, presented to Livable Neighborhoods this morning, was speaking to the Kensington neighborhood group earlier this week, showing them how that data specific to their neighborhood can help neighborhood organizations in understanding kind of what's going on, some of the dynamics, and perhaps if there are neighbors and residents in need. So our roadmap, we've got our 311 CRM has been migrated to the cloud system. That went live in September. That opened up new possibilities for how we integrate with other systems. We are actively passing test cases back and forth from Public Works to the 311 system, so anticipate that going live with live data in the next week, literally next week. We've launched the mobile app, and we're implementing this new map on open data of the 311 requests. Going forward, looking at phone system integration. So this is when you call, it recognizes your number. It says, okay, this is Alan Howes, and it brings up your record and says, okay, you called about these 3 things over the last 6 months. So it gives you a much richer customer picture. So it's not just, as you're saying, those individual individual calls and contacts, but we can then begin to put that in the context of a person and understand, again, better what his needs are and what people are calling about. Likewise, working actively on this waste management integration and the NRC integration as well. So we've made progress, but more to go. So over to the 311 app here. What do people want to do on a mobile app? They want to report problems, complaints. They want to request service. They want to pay bills, ask questions, receive alerts and reminders. And we want to provide that for them. So we partnered with PayIt. It's a Kansas City-based company. They manage the Kansas Turnpike Authority mobile payments system. So if you have that on your phone, there's an app for the Turnpike. That's how I got my little smart thing you can go through without stopping. And they're also selected as a mobile provider for the state of Kansas. So going forward, what we're talking with them and with the state about is, are there state services, think motor vehicle renewals, think other things that can have state involvement that could be laid in as services that residents could do via the mobile app, and a list of some of those clients as well. So some of the service options here, again, talked about mobile 311, enhanced payment services, and we'll get to that here in just a second. The ability to pay real estate and personal property taxes is coming next month. And easy account management, so the ability to store payment information in here securely, to have receipts of payments and of 311 submission requests, to be able to go back and look at that and say, I thought, what did I pay last year? Or if I need to document that and provide it to a bank for some other purpose, I can go back and get that without having to call the Treasury Department and ask for that. And again, it provides a seamless integration of the website and the mobile experience, so those are consistent regardless of the platform. Again, a priority of the commission has been, how do we improve communication? So we talked a little bit about the confirmation email, and again, recognizing that people got and submitted a request and that was received, the ability to retrieve that payment history, the ability also to get notifications about things before they happen. So a reminder, this payment is coming up. You need to make, so that people know it's not just playing catch up on people, but also helping them stay ahead of what their needs are. And there are a number of future enhancements. The ability to implement closed loop information into this, so you can check the status of those submissions, something we'll be adding in. Again, the notification that something was completed, so you submitted a pothole, that pothole gets filled, it gets closed out on the public works side, and then you get notified that in fact happened. And on the court side, and you notice municipal court, again, 30+% of the calls, we're looking and actively engaged with municipal court, and Brett's been really active working with their administrator on how do we improve the overall customer experience for municipal court, because everything we can do there, whether through the mobile app, whether notifying people about court appearances or providing the ability to pay through the app, all will help to improve that and also drive down those significant call volumes that we get through 311 on municipal court. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Debbie to talk about payment.
Well, it wouldn't be customer service if you didn't involve the treasurer office. Let's put it that way. And it wouldn't make sense to hire a company like Pay It if we didn't have a payment application involved. So real estate and personal property is going to be the first payment application that is put into the application. The customers will be able to do their real estate and their personal property taxes with their app. The app's going to be connected directly to the website, so when they go into our website, it's going to feed them into the app so that they get the benefits from that app that they're not currently getting on our website. A couple of things that are important to remember, and I think Alan touched a little bit on this, is it's going to provide them a receipt. It's also going to store that receipt if they sign up for the app, so that they go back in April when they need their tax receipt and they can get it out of their little wallet instead of calling the treasurer's office, which is nice. One of the big benefits for the treasurer's office is that it's going to allow us to upload our tax payments from the app into the tax system with an upload instead of manually enter those. That's what we've been doing lately that's what we've been doing in the past with all web payments, is we have to manually enter them. So this is a big step for us technologically, and something that we're really excited about. It's going to be a really efficient method for us to now upload those payments. The app for us is we're trying to hit mid-November. The reason for that is when we send our tax bills out in November, that's our biggest bucket of people we're going to ever see. We've put on our envelopes that this app's coming soon, so that we're trying to get people engaged and working with it. We've also added to the website that application's there. When they go to the website, our normal people that have always gone to the website will now be kind of asked and encouraged to now join up with the app so that they can create their accounts and they can do those things. Two reasons we want to do that is for the receipts, obviously, but it also gives them those reminder notices. So now they don't have to wait. They'll get their second bill for their second payment, but they're also going to get a ding on their phone that says, hey, remember your tax bill's due in 2 weeks. So that's going to be very helpful for them, I think, technologically. As I mentioned, it will replace our website. The new online platform does give them an ACH option. We don't currently have that on our website, and we've wanted to do that for a long time. It's going to also have a really huge projected cost savings for the unified government. In the new app, the ACH payment will be $1.25 with a $2 fee, so $3.25 to do that as opposed to 2.5% or 2.25% rate on their credit card. I would anticipate we'll see a huge number of people move from credit card payment to ACH or EFT payment. And that's going to save the unified government a huge amount of money, because currently we're paying over $300,000 a year in credit card fees. So it's going to make a big difference for us.
And I just want to clarify to you all, so this is a recommendation on a policy decision that we are making with part of this presentation, so it's clear. We currently cover this credit card 2.5% credit card fee. That's why Debbie says it's a big savings to us. Our recommendation, when we did that initially, it was to push people to get out here and do online payments rather than coming in. The thought here is now we're providing an electric online payment option by using the ACH. So somebody can hook in, they can make the payment, and we're going to pick up that, what'd you say, it's a $3 charge.
$25.
They do it that way. If they want to do the credit card fee, and there's some big issues with it where we see some major customers do large transactions back over that, and we're paying that. This is the recommendation. This is the way we're structuring it to go forward, and I just want to make that clear that that is a little bit of a change. But we are providing the free option to do it online, and that's why.
And I have one clarification. You said this will replace the website. You can still do it on the website.
You'll still sign on to the website, but it'll connect to the app once you get there. They won't see a difference on the website.
Okay. I just wanted just the semantics of that to make sure they can still go online on their computer and do it at home.
Correct.
Absolutely. And it'll be the same interface they see on their phone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any additional questions on that?
That's good.
All right, so I'm going to turn over to Mike for a demonstration here.
So can I just say a few words? First of all, Mike Plunkett from, I'm a co-founder of Pay It, and I will just say that Pay It, yes, we do payments, we do so much more. it's a real pleasure to be a partner with the unified government of Wyandotte County and KCK. On a personal level, I'm a Kansan. I started my career almost 20 years ago on the third floor here, doing probably for 2 or 3 years projects in the finance and purchasing and wastewater treatment plants all over the plan number 20, and so it's wonderful to be back here. We started this company because, frankly, it's really hard to do business with government, and that is not an indictment of this government. It is a fact across the country. And so our entire mission is to simplify citizens' ability to connect with, do business with, transact with, and communicate with their government. And so we've been at this for 4 years. We have had tremendous success across the country, as you noted by some of the clients. And as Alan said, and I would just congratulate you on being an innovator in this field. I mean, we have been in city halls, county courthouses, and state capitals for the last 4 years, and you're a great partner. Just a great partner. This is our first iteration of 311 here, but today we're doing things like across the country, motor vehicle renewals, utility payments, court payments and information. We're doing tax payments. We're doing a lot of things. With the state of Kansas, we were selected as the web and mobile provider in a statewide RFP, through which this initial contract is a statement of work on that contract. For the state of Kansas, here shortly in the next month, you'll be able to register your vehicles. You'll shortly be able to do voter registration will be part of that. Court payments at a state level will most likely be part of that. You'll be able to order vital records, birth certificates, and those kinds of things, and much more. And just a quick note on the technology, we have a platform-based, it's a modern platform-based approach. So if you were to set up an account and store payment, if you were in your MyKTag app, or if you were in the state of Kansas, all of that information is available to you as a citizen of this county and in the MyWyco app, so it's all persists. Anything you do on the web, you can do on the mobile. Think of Amazon. Amazon, your account, I do stuff on the web, I do stuff on the mobile. It's the same premise here. So we're really, really thrilled about that. So I will go and...
Which one do you want to start with? You want to do the...
Well, yeah, why don't we do this because it's a little more comprehensive. You can show that this is, let's see, where do I flip? I want to show you something that we launched a couple of months ago in Grand Rapids. Now, they don't have 311. We're going to be adding that. We're starting with 311 here. In Grand Rapids, we took over both web and mobile. So anytime you go to their website, and Mr. Mayor, it's exactly as you suggest. You go to their website and you say, I want to pay this utility bill, and we bring up the application. So we are the website, not the website, but web apps. Yeah.
Commissioner Philbrook, you want to jump in quick?
So, yeah, real quickly, just to let you know, when that comes up and it goes pay it, I'm like, because you got to remember, I'm in the upper group, and so I'm not adept at a lot of this stuff. And so I looked at it and I go, pay it. Hell no, I'm not going to push on that because I'm afraid that I'm going to be paying something.
Yes.
And then I realized, okay, let's start playing through it. This is for the people out in TV land.
Yes.
Because there's some of them like me, but the minute you start talking about putting my personal information out there, I'm going to be concerned, okay?
Yes, I agree.
And so the minute it said pay it, I'm going, is this really it? And then I went on through it, and in one of them where it also gives you the option of, when you're accepting this particular to download, it gives you the option of, do you want to give you your credit card information and all that kind of stuff? You can just go skip. Okay, and that is the one that makes me feel the best of any of those buttons. But I just wanted to share that with other people out there because some folks get a little squirrely when, like myself, when they start looking at this stuff. So pay it doesn't mean you're going to have to pay your way through it. It just means they have that option, and this is your app.
That's wise, and we face that, and typically Grand Rapids is an anomaly. Typically, we don't need our brand. We pay it as we are a partner, and it's MyWyco, or the Kansas application will be. Now, I'm not a marketing whiz, so I didn't come up with it unless you like it, but it'll be ICANN, KAN. That would be the statewide app. Again, if you like it, I'll take credit, but I didn't have anything to do with it. So it's interesting. Pay it is confusing, and through some of the data, as you as you get into this, Grand Rapids is really interesting. They've had a 50% increase in digital traffic across the services that we're going to talk about. And they offer guest pay services, but 90% of the folks that do it, and this is over 50% of the transactions, it's a huge number of transactions that go through there, create an account. And about a third of those use ACH, and for the higher dollar transactions, we're seeing ACH, and for the lower dollars, you're seeing credit card. And they made the decision to fund certain of those transactions, and others the citizens pay for too. So there's services that go back and forth. And by the way, I would just say this on 311: you all are not alone. The average, and we looked across 75 cities. We talk to 311 all the time. It's where local government connects most. The average number of calls into 311 call centers is 1 per citizen, and the average cost of those calls is between $3 and $5 per call. And I'm not sure exactly what the cost numbers, we haven't delved into that, but it says way more to me than cost. It's citizens are confused and they want to know. A third of those are court payments. So when we launch courts, we're going to seek to also notify court dates. You don't have to call to get your court date and those kinds of things. So Grand Rapids, let me show you this, because these are services that you don't see in your My WICO today, but a lot of them are coming, and this is an experience to go through and pay for a service. So as you onboard, we make it very friendly. Think about the best commercial applications out there, your Amazons, your Starbucks, your bank apps. We want government to be in that class. So today these manifest in bots or conversational, because the lowest common denominator of digital literacy is texting. People can text, and so you'll see that. But we also have Alexa integration and ability to do multilingual and to see what language is on your device and to show it to you in Spanish, etc. These are screenshots. If you had if we were doing it live, you would see this scroll like you were texting. So hey, I'm here to pay your property tax, and so at the bottom you would click on I'll pay my property tax. We also have some natural language processing that will enable more communication. So you see that text box right there. There's not a lot in there today, but it may be just chatting. Maybe it even gets into policy discussions. Lots of opportunities. Yeah, so I want to look up your number. This scrolls up and down. In Grand Rapids, there are 2 ways to credential into the system, and we rely on our partners to say, how do you want to credential in? Well, house number and your last name. Well, the last name, it happens to be in this test account law, so it populated that under last name. So at the bottom, I'm just going to type in my building number right there, and then it's going to pull it up. Oh, it's overdue. By the way, these are the kinds of things in many places that we go, including Kansas. You cannot pay an overdue vehicle registration online. That's going to be different as of the end of next month, because we can hook in, we have business rules, and we can add that in. So yep, that's my tax bill. Let me go back. See where it says view details? Maybe I want to see more details. These are the details that they provide in Grand Rapids on that property tax bill. And then does that look fine? Well, nobody really thinks a tax bill looks great, but that's the option. So yeah, that's it. And then you see at the bottom, add a payment method. So here, by the way, I'm going to have to get this back because that's my real credit card. Now it's not going to get you very far, but you can scan the credit card and it pulls it in. It puts so you can store 1 or multiple credit cards. You can store 1 or multiple bank accounts. You don't have to re-enter it, just like Amazon. It's exactly like those kinds of modern commercial
you scan a check if you want ACH?
We don't have that yet, but that's on the roadmap. Yeah, just checks happen to be laid out in different ways, but yes, on the roadmap, but not there yet. So the payment amounts at the bottom. You submit, it brings up the bill, and so you have lots of ability to make sure it's right before you hit that big blue button at the bottom. You pay it. It says, okay, thanks. You've paid your property bill. We've emailed you the receipt. You can access your receipt in the wallet. So the wallet is in the app. It's interesting because it's more than just receipts. Think permits, licenses, hunting licenses, your car registration is going to be applicable to, now nobody in here would ever get a ticket, but if you do get a ticket, you can pull up your car registration in Kansas once we get this, once this goes live. So it's fully connected to you. So the opportunity, you see where it says tell your friends, this is interesting because you can pull up, you can tweet, can text your friends, you can post to Facebook, hey, in this case, and you guys would have the opportunity to use this or not, but you get the word out about how great it is to do these simple things and not have to fill it out and mail it in or take off work and go in line. So this is the wallet. I'm skipping over some things, but this is the wallet. It's a property tax receipt. This is how they have it formatted here. So it's a receipt. It stays there. Now, here's what else happens if you create an account, which you would. In this particular case, next year, you could sign up for e-billing. So no more paper goes out. Now, some of these are statutory, some of these are policy, and some are law. But so in in Beaufort County, South Carolina, anybody know where that is? Near Charleston. We are actually, we're doing property taxes about the same time we're launching. 2 weeks ago, we did an e-billing. People sign up for e-billing is the first thing they did. So they will reduce their actual paper bills in a significant way before they actually go out. So there's lots of things that we'd like to talk with you about on this innovation roadmap to get where we want to go. And this is the email that I got. That happens to be the receipt. So email, it's in your wallet, in your app, and that's it for Grand Rapids. So should we go over and take a quick look at website? Okay, so I'll talk louder.
No, you're going to have to take your microphone with you because we have people on TV who want to hear you.
Is that a
Commissioner Walker insists.
Okay. Okay. Here we are. We are on the website 311.wykokck.org, and we're in service request for 311. So the website stays, and you would launch. I'm clicking on submit a request. It's loading. Still loading. I know it works, by the way. I see all of the requests. Well,
going live. This is.
I know we're online. Well, I wonder if this is an old browser. I don't know the answer.
Why call you stay? This? Oh, it needs KCK on it.
This always happens when you're in real time in a group presentation, right?
Yeah, we have a question while we're waiting. Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. I have a question in general. You know, with everything that you've talked about, Alan, the search WICO and everything that's been discussed, I have a smartphone, but that doesn't mean that I love it. And people, I think even older than me, not just with a smartphone, but a laptop or a desktop or whatever device they're using, they're going to have a problem at some point. Is there a tech support line? Do we do that now and I just don't know it?
There is, so there'll be two options. One, we retain the 311s. You can always call 311.
Right.
So that stays, and then there is support through Pay It. So if you run into a problem with the app, there is a support function through the app that they can help with. don't know if that answers your question.
You know, when I am trying to pay my taxes online and I'm doing something wrong and I really want to finish that process and I'm just doing one little thing wrong and I don't know what it is there somebody I can call that I can walk through that with, that can say, oh no, don't push that button, push this button? That's the question I'm asking, is just tech support in general.
It provides that step by step. And if they're, depending on the sort of the situation, there is, through one, there's also the Treasury Department. They do that, I think now if there's online payment questions. So there's several avenues, I guess, available to people for those kind of questions.
So on the different platforms, let's say, again, I'm registering or renewing my tags. When I'm on that site, is there a prominent display of, hey, if you're having problems, call 573?
I would say that in what we've seen of the flows of this process, almost every step of the way, there's an option to, do you need to call?
Okay.
Do you need to call? And it will call directly to either the Treasury office or whatever the applicable phone number is for that particular section of what you're doing. I can't find my parcel. This isn't the right one.
Right.
Do you need to call so-and-so? With that, throughout the application, they've input that option to have to call somebody. So I think there's a lot of places where people have that opportunity to have that.
I think it's important if the data that you're telling us at the front end of the presentation is that it's the boomers where the technology growth is happening, because that's people like me who don't know what we're doing. So that's just in general, just was curious about, are there going to be people there to help?
Commissioner McKiernan.
I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but it just loaded fine with Chrome.
Yeah.
Would it be a browser?
Yeah. It usually supports the last two versions of any browser, and I don't know what version this is. Of course, Murphy shows up when we're here in a public environment. But Commissioner Bynum, if I pronounce that correctly, I would just say this, because we have those conversations across the country all the time. This is all we do. Except for raise kids and do those things, but in a professional environment. And, it's interesting. It certainly is not for everyone. That's for one. We want everybody to have options how they want to engage. But if you look across the breadth of digital offerings across government, just in general, it is typically, this is not about here, it is typically 20-year-old web form type things, type interfaces. If you compare what you would do to pay any tax bill or anything with the state, or fill out an application for TANF support or child support, or get help with those things, or register to vote, these were interfaces developed really in the first several years after the internet, and that is not good enough. It's not good enough. So one, we're making it easier and more intuitive. That's our role. It's all of our role. But as a company, we absolutely focus on that with user research. Two, we make help readily available. We're not going to be perfect at it, but we try to. We have support, and we want to get better and better at routing to the appropriate government resources. And and we have a learning process. And three, I would just say this is really interesting data. This is one piece of data. The fastest growing users of Facebook, for example, are over the age of 60. More and more people are doing things on Amazon.
They're retiring and they don't have anything else to do.
I guess so. I don't know. My daughter spends quite a bit of time doing that. But yeah, it's not perfect, but I think we're making it more available.
So while this is loading, I also have something I feel really strongly about. When I pull up my WYCO app, I don't want it to be your logo. I want it to be our unified government logo in black and yellow. So when do we get our color scheme and our logo? So the button on my button on here is not a blue capital. I want the WYCO KCK logo so I can touch that, or the 311 logo. I want one of those two. When does that happen? Does that cost extra?
Well, we're not even charging it for 3-1. No, I'm just kidding. A little bit up front. Let us work with the team on that. There's some things we can do because it's a multi-tenant platform approach and some things we can't, so let me look into that for you.
Yeah, don't you, I mean, I want people to look at it and know that's my city.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, okay. Understood.
So while we're waiting, sorry, boss.
Go for it.
I don't know if that's
I just
going to
wanted
work.
to say that you are, my experience walking through it, putting in my request to 311 was probably one of the nicest experience I've had dealing with a program because it's so friendly is what I want to say. It feels friendly. It's like ask for your information. It says, is this really the what you want to say? You can go back and fix it if you need to. And it just is not one of these things you have 15 seconds to finish this and we're going to turn you off.
Just a static form. It's interesting because, when you're going through the chat and you know how the 3 dots come up if you've seen it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we program that in based on user research. The system can go faster than that, but it looks like you're chatting with somebody. Because when you're texting and somebody's typing.
Right, and that's exactly what it looks like. But it makes it feel more friendly. So, and I think a lot of us who are now used to chatting or whatever and using it, especially the ones that type slower.
So
it's very helpful.
So we only have about 7 or 8 minutes left. So
I don't know that's.
So why don't you walk us through what it does and then talk about what's going to come next? Because, for instance, I'm looking forward to taking pictures of things and texting photos in. When's that coming? I just want to know what's coming now and kind of what the timeline is for future stuff. And I think we can use the rest of our time doing that.
Sure. You want to take it? You want me to take it?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So as the 311 system gets, and I'm not as intimately familiar as that system, the new system, we bring that online, and it has more features. Then we're going to be able to have people submit pictures for 311 requests. We're also going to be able to push notifications on here's the status. So right now we can't do that because we don't have all the data in the back-end system. You guys are going through a huge system upgrade. So we're connecting in, and this is V1, V0.1 really. And so things like we want to work with you guys to figure out what to launch. Some of the things that we know we want to launch include the pictures, include the ability to say, hey, here's the status, not just binary, it's submitted or it's finished. It's, hey, it has been given to the Public Works Department, or it's given to the Trash Department, or whatever that request is, so you can see it. You can sign up to be notified in the way that you want to be notified, email or push in the app or text or whatever. So there's lots of ways. Oh, goodness, okay.
So it was the browser.
This can be, Mr. Mayor, this can be really quickly. I can just go through this for those that haven't seen it.
Yep, go for it.
Sir. So right here, when you go into your all's website, it would pull this up. You would, boy, that's a sensitive mouse. You would get started. I'm going to just continue as a guest here. You could use your account or set one up. Now, I didn't come up with .bot either. That's your all's.
I like the .bot. It's cute.
So my name is .bot. What do you want to do? I want to go down here and report an issue. I'm going to have to put that there. Okay, tell me a bit more. And so here, if you scroll across, you can see the various categories of issues. I'm going to go something else. I'm going to go, let's see, so I want a trash collection issue. No one likes to have garbage just laying around. Let's get your request submitted. We actually go through, so if somebody give me a good zip code here.
66.
There we go. So we're going to submit what happened here. Sorry. Oh, submit. Excuse me. So then you type in, I don't want anybody actually think, oh, excuse me. This is a test. I don't want anybody doing anything about this. So we're going to submit that. And I'm going to stay anonymous, but I could include my information. Even if I had an account, I could do it either way. I'm going to stay anonymous. it's going to submit, or I need to change or start over, so it looks good. And done. I could do something else, report another issue. Since I don't have an account, it doesn't email. If I had an account today, it would email me that it's been submitted. Yeah.
I'd like to reiterate to everyone watching, if you do have a TRAS issue, please go through 311. That allows us to track it, and it allows us to fine the operator if they do not perform at a certain level. We cannot, they encourage you to call them directly. Call us, 311, report the TRAS issue, and then we can track it and issue fines if necessary. All right, any other questions? Commissioner Townsend.
If you remain anonymous, does that affect the caller's ability later to track, to see, like the trash issue? Will they still be able to track the outcome?
I don't think so. Do you have?
Technically in the app, probably not. If it was a CRM issue that we'd entered on our files, you could probably look up the address and go back and look in that history. Most often what you're seeing now, Commissioner, is it's a contact-based management system. If there is anonymity in there, they won't obviously receive emails of confirmation there. But we're encouraging people to, most often they do want to sign up for things. And in code violation cases, obviously, they don't want to register their names there, but for tracking purposes, most people, once we get to the contact-centric portion, we can look them up. It's got a historical roster that shows what's pending and what's been done, kind of on the case file itself. From a mobile app perspective, I would say yes in the future, not now probably. That's a good question for me.
Yeah, maybe once we get an issue number that it can give them a real-time issue number, use this, and here's how you track it, et cetera. That's absolutely possible through our technology. If the system can provide it, we can put that in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'd like to just address one thing here too that's really important. There's been a lot of hard work and a lot of good work that's been done so far. There's a lot still to be done. These are based on iterations. It's about context-centric management. Really important. I mean, but all businesses go through a state of equilibrium where we kind of alluded on what our call volumes look like. And in looking in the future, we will see how those start. Some people will pick the app, some will still call us. But that will allow us to basically get down to business is what I call this. And I have the advantage of being able to do both. This never stops for us. We have a quest to keep moving forward because it's a dynamic environment. We need to keep making constant improvements to this. But I get to go back and manage the business too. And that's where we take this data and we hit the ground running with it. And we start to look at what these stories are telling us, and then we manage to that and we market to that. And that's the importance of what we're trying to do here, is to get this out in front of the public so they can pick and choose how they communicate with us and solve the real easy issues, for like municipal court, a big volume for us, but they've lost their ticket. They just want to know what day they're on, what their docket is, if they're on a docket, things like that. But to call us for the big ticket issues, and we can help to resolve that. But the tracking and the communication piece is paramount. But this is day one of a long journey, and it's a great journey. We're customer-centric. That's why we're here, and we're proud to be serving the population at large, and that's why we're doing what we're trying to do as a team. And it's a great team. There's a lot of hard work's been done here.
Yes,
Another minute. So what does happen if you enter 66012 in the zip code? And that's Bonner Springs. And I assume that some issues, county issues, this would be a good application for, but for some questions, city issues, what is the response? What happens?
I would say today that gets submitted, all that data gets submitted into 311. And I would say this, the system today is, it's version 1, but it has the ability to do things like put geofencing around where you can actually submit something, which is not really there today. But right now it goes in for triage into the 311.
Yeah, and I can answer that too. And that triage is important, where we would take county services across the whole county. But if it's a city function, we have direct contacts with the other cities, obviously, Bonner Springs, Edwardsville. And the map itself will do the geocoding and the fencing to allow that interaction with the app itself to tell them if they need to contact us, or to at least get it to us so we can reach back out and communicate to them about how to make that direct contact if it's not something that the mobile app can actually handle.
because it's outside the boundary. But in the future, I see this thing as being holistic to where all of these applicable zip codes will fall within here. We need to maybe make a few agreements with the other cities on some of that, but it's about getting it done and completing that circle too.
So if you call 311 and you're in Bonner Springs, does it connect to our 311 system?
It does connect, yes.
Okay, and then if they say we got a street light out in Bonner Springs, what does 311 do with that?
We report that to the Board of Public Utilities directly.
But they don't cover Bonner Springs.
Well, okay, in the Bonner Springs?
Yeah.
Light out in Bonner Springs?
Yes.
Then it would go straight to Bonner Springs front office.
And you would communicate that to
It would communicate, yes. If it was for our jurisdiction, it would go to Board of Public Utilities. But if it's somebody, in passing, as an example, that lives out there that calls us and says they've seen it down here, if it's going for a Bonner Springs light outage, then we connect that back to their front City Hall.
Right.
We communicate that for them.
Anything else? Great work, very exciting, a big step forward for customer service. I'm very excited about the payment options and very excited about all the work you've done. Thank you for the whole team. Thanks everybody for all the team that's working on this. Great job. This meeting is adjourned and we'll be downstairs at 7 o'clock for our regular Planning and Zoning and Commission meeting.